Hi, I'm Beth, and I'm the creator of Street Side of the Church Door. And what this intends to accomplish is starting a conversation for those who are looking for some spark that's going to help around their purpose. This is a project that's been true to my heart for a really long time, and one that I've put off for arguably 25 years. If you've seen any of the previous episodes, you'll know that production is something that's low priority, mainly because I don't know how to do it. And secondly, because if I spent time getting the right lighting, background, outfit, hair, makeup, then that would be a great excuse for me to never accomplish anything around the actual goal of what I believe Street Side of the Church Door is meant to achieve. So, all that to be said, this is episode 3. Time to just dive in and talk a little bit about what Street Side is, why it came to life, and what I think it will accomplish. So when I take some inventory and look around and see what is happening in our culture and our world and where we're getting information, I think that we're living in one of the best times ever. Let me begin by saying that. We have more information or more access to information, resources, the ability to share, the ability to communicate is on a new level. But when I look around, I'm not really seeing people who are like me. And I don't mean that in the way that I think a lot of this identity trend has been going, but I'm not seeing a lot of women who are vocal in finding purpose, in figuring out kind of what's going on with this calling or this nudge that's inside of them that says, like, I think something more is here. I also don't see a lot of women, especially talking about that to a secular audience. We have the folks writing the Bible studies. There's a lot of women writing the Bible studies, doing the women's conference, who are doing very noble work. But they're not. I'm not finding it as easy to identify because they're not going to a 9-to-5 job, making multi-million-dollar decisions for their customers or their company, and then coming back to talk about a Bible study. It's hard for me to find people to identify with in that case. Then kind of take this flip side of it, and there's a lot of men, scientists, comedians, fitness gurus who are focused on sharing information that helps their audience, and I think they're doing it in a really, really great way. There are certain people that are guests of these podcasts, of kind of these forums that have now become kind of these modern day places where we sit with the so be it like philosophers of our day that are going through the different literature. They're maybe even creating a lot of the research themselves, but there aren't very many women speaking up. There aren't very many women who are in business speaking up about what business challenges they're coming up against. I'm finding it hard to find women who are really driven to meet sales quotas, achieve certain income levels, achieve certain material assets. We all identify to this stuff differently. It's not saying that I necessarily want it or that everyone should, but I'm not seeing that there's someone in the market who has that desire to talk about meeting quota and the challenges around that talks about getting started when it's really uncertain about what that start is, who talks about a lot of the things that by the time someone hits 40 have faced. Could be foreclosure, job loss, career change, divorce, children coming, going, surviving, not surviving. There's a lot of meat that I think we just aren't having a conversation about not an angry conversation, not a conversation to fix or solve, and not a conversation to go back in and dig up any trauma or to spend a lot of time talking about the trauma, but then add like this element of faith to it. And I think that's also even more difficult to find. I think right now it would be easier for me to get on LinkedIn and get a 15-minute meeting with a female CEO of a billion-dollar company than it would for me to get a hold of some of the women who are, I would say, championing what's happening in the faith-based environment today. I don't care for that. Like I just don't like that. I was looking around for help when I really needed it. I had to lean on podcasts, YouTube channels, sermons, music. Um, what are some of the other things that we tend to run to? Often, perhaps Instagram posts, books. I had to go that route because there wasn't anyone to go sit down and have a bi-directional conversation with. I think the world is changing in that we are getting mentors. The mentors are just one directional, and that's okay. I also want to be accessible to not only an audience, but I don't understand how that's going to necessarily work at scale, but there's some things that I feel like I just don't really need a lot of background and understanding for in order to get started doing something. And so when I say that it's hard to sometimes find a lot of that support and different themes that we can identify with, I also found it really hard to do that inside the walls of the church. So in 2020, my life went through what I refer to somewhat affectionately now, a dumpster fire where I got divorced and kind of lost my footing about what I knew to be like my normal, my routine, my safety nets in a lot of ways too. I lost all of that in a matter of days. And so I found myself looking for some answers. But what never left was this nudge that I had inside of me that I, again, believe really started to happen at 15 and grow and grow and grow, even though I went further and further away from it. I was constantly always still looking for it. Like something in my spirit just didn't sit still. I wasn't necessarily causing change for the sake of causing change. Frankly, I couldn't articulate what it was I was looking for. I just knew that where I wasn't it, that there was something more, something was coming. I had made decisions that were preventing me and holding me back from what that eventual thing could look like. So now I know a few things. One thing I know is that this burning passion inside of me that I would say is my calling, is why I was created, that was set into motion long before this body ever showed up and was put onto earth, that it is coming to term, that there is something inside of me that I can't stay quiet about anymore. I don't know how it's going to look. I don't know what the polish is going to look like. The production, as you can tell, is very low. I don't have all of the answers around what it is necessarily, and I've waited for years praying, hoping, expectant that that would just somehow magically reveal itself to me. And what I have found is that it doesn't necessarily, this idea around like waking up and then knowing that this is my calling, knowing that this is my passion, it doesn't always come together with a clear list of instructions or steps. Sometimes the very first thing is in starting, that messy start, that dirty first draft, getting stuck in the messy middle, not knowing like really where the next step is going to be, but knowing without a shadow of a doubt to the core of my being that there's something inside of me that is so important to share that I can't keep quiet about it anymore. And what that thing is, and even in doing now, here we are, episode 3, so recording 3, even in doing that, I'm getting more clear about what everything is. I have some feelings, I have some thoughts, and then if someone were to say, like, tell me about it, I feel like I'd take 20, 30 minutes trying to explain it and probably not get anywhere. But what I do know is there's a lot of life that happens at the street side of the church door. Like I said, by the time I hit 40, I had the credentials of education because I was told, go ahead, go grow up, go get an education, and go get married. So I did. I went and got the education. So if we say that qualifications tend to be like kind of this document, this license, this piece of paper, this diploma that one walks away from, I have 2 of those. I also have 2 divorce certificates. I had a very quick marriage early on, my early 20s. And then I had a marriage that ended in a tremendous fire at the end of 2020, at the end, kind of at the end of my 30s. So I have those qualifications. The qualification that I don't have, that as a result I've counted myself out from really doing anything meaningful around it, is I don't have some type of biblical training. I don't have some theological interpretation. I don't have really even bi-directional mentors or resources where I can talk about themes in the Bible. I've tried to. There's a lot of times, there have been several instances where as a female, I've gone to a church and various churches across the country and said, I have questions about this, and I have questions about the way this could maybe be interpreted or handled, or this is what I'm thinking about. And I've been told, I've been treated as though because I'm a woman, there's obviously some type of ulterior motive, and therefore it's some salacious intent that I'm there in the first place. Secondly, because of my divorced past, it makes me even more of a threat to any type of conversation, because for sure I'm there because of sexual attraction or some other romantic association, not merely to learn. That often is, I would say, a prevailing theme. And then I also have to go talk to a pastor, typically male. In my case, it's always been male, but I know that's not always the case. Go talk to a male about what I'm thinking as far as either how I'm feeling about where I'm at in life, this burning passion that's inside of me that I don't know how to articulate and I don't know what to do with. And then finally, asking some questions about the Bible itself. Those are conversations that is really, really hard for a female to have, especially a female that really wants to dig in, because oftentimes it's like, come back and come back with your husband. And it's like, well, I don't have one. And so many men are in positions of leadership in the church that for the woman who wants to go ask some questions, she can't get anywhere. I can't get anywhere. So kind of pulling all of this together, what I seek to create around this passion that's inside of me is a forum, is a conversation, is a place where we like dig in and ask hard questions about what society is suggesting, the behavior that we ought to perform. And I'd say that every society and every generation kind of has this unwritten code of performance that is just passed down. So how we ought to perform. And then also, like, what do we do with it? And what do we do with it if we've made some mistakes along the way, which I refer to as real life? We can't act perfect, but by the time we get to the church, there's kind of this expectation that we are perfect. Switching gears slightly, but around this idea of purpose and how to kind of figure it out, one of the things that I've been convicted by, and I think is really interesting to share, really insightful to share, is that when things are bad and we get out of that bad thing and we get to a place of good, it's easy to stay there. And I think that we stay there for a few reasons. One of those being of sheer gratitude, because our memory has context to what bad looked like. And here we are, here we're sitting, and it's not bad anymore. And if I want more than what I have right now when it's already good, how ungrateful am I for essentially the rescue out of what wasn't good? I think that's a common theme, that once we're on the other side of bad, it's pretty easy to stay stuck in the good. But we forget that we're still stuck, that we're not moving forward. And if we're not moving forward, are we moving back? Perhaps, maybe we're not moving back, but time is always moving forward. And so there's opportunity costs that are passing us by left and right because we're not doing anything about it, because we're basking in the good. And in a lot of ways, that's been celebrated. That's a noble thing to do, that once you get to the good spot, that you stay there and you enjoy it. But it's not meant to be a place where we stop. I like to speak in visuals. I think that way a lot. And so I think about, that clunky situation, the bad situation, or at least the thing that was suboptimal. And you get out of that. So it's like exiting a room. You get out of that. You get out of that house. That house is on fire, so you leave. And now you're sitting in a place that is maybe everything you want. It's in either the right environment, right house, on the patio, under your favorite tree, with a favorite view in front of you. And you're like, this feels good. And I got there and I sat there for about 3 years. Now, for a year, I was spending a long time looking for that place. I was doing a lot of work on myself. I was doing a lot of work just cleaning up. Sometimes you can't really even think about other things. You're just so focused on the task at hand to essentially survive that day and get to the next one with the tasks that are needed for the day. But over time that dissipates, and pretty soon, you kind of get to this place and it's like, okay, this is good. This is good. And even though I was on the patio of what was really good, I still was restless because I know, at the time I knew, now I know, there's something more for me than what I'm doing. There's this thing inside of me that I've been putting off for a long time. And I don't exactly know how to articulate it, but I'm willing to do something about it now. And starting with posts, starting with this post, starting with this conversation, it gets me closer to articulating that, and it gets me closer to action, because it's something now I'm finally doing that takes me far out of my comfort zone, extremely vulnerable, and says, even though I don't know what I'm doing, I have enough faith in God, the God that I trust, that what he promised to me about how he can use what happened in the past for something that could help someone else, how he can use that is worth me getting off the porch and starting to have a conversation about what it is I'm passionate about. I don't think it's my responsibility to find the viewers, the audience. It's my responsibility to be mindful of how I use that time, so I'm not rambling for half an hour or so. But it's really important to me to not just wish for something to come into fruition while I'm sitting in the good place. There's also something that could be said about the good place. I think a lot of times when we think about the challenges or the struggles or the things that we've overcome or are overcoming, we tend to kind of place this hierarchy of things that I'm not. So, for example, whether you go to church or you hear someone talking about like the challenges that they're facing and the enemy that's attacking them or the confusion that they're living in, addiction, whether it's alcohol, food, sugar, exercise, porn, whatever that might be. There's addiction. There is job loss. There's health. There's the status, the health and well-being of the children, of our parents, whether or not we have housing, whether or not we can pay the bills. Like, those are really hard things. And so oftentimes when I go to church or I go have a conversation with someone else and they're like, "How are you doing?" And I'm like, I'm doing great. I'm doing really well. My health is good. I'm sleeping well. I have money to pay my bills. I have a little money to do other things. I have a great social support system. My family is well and healthy and happy. They're thriving. I have good house. I have a good place to live in. I'm safe. I have resources in my vehicle. My job is going well. I'm doing what I need to do for my mobility inside my own, my career. And then it's like, and I say, but there's just like something missing. Like something is happening that I don't have. And it's like, okay, well, uh, what about your partner? How are things going with your partner? And the way things are going with my partner, save that for another episode. Like, so remarkably good. I could have never written down on paper just how great that relationship could even be, and I get to live it. That's going great. But then it's like, what about this nudge? Like, what about this thing? What is going on that is like keeping me up at night? Not because of concern, but because I'm like, I just don't know. And what I found is that sometimes not like it's easy to pin the struggle on these obvious things that I just named off. It's really hard to pin the struggle when everything is going great and then it's like, but there's just something that's off. And what I've come to find out that what that little off piece was all about this thing I want to do around purpose. And sometimes it's really hard to start because we have programs, plans, the multi-step programs, we have the talking points, we have the videos, we have the education, we have the training, we have all of that for all of those issues I just listed. But where's the resource for someone who has a lot going really well, who has a past of a time where things weren't going well, but who knows that there's a lot more to tomorrow, to the rest of today, to the future, than what they're getting out of it? That's hard. So what I'm finding, what I'm seeing, what I'm observing is that even though there wasn't someone like me out there when I needed it, I can start to create that resource for other people because I went through it, I got through it. Now I can go back through it and help you through it. That is a great quote by Joyce Meyer and gave me so much encouragement. But what I wanted to see was like someone living it, like someone that had the experience of going through different things, who had dealt with it, who had come out the other side, who could say like, also like, here's some things that are going on, and we're going to talk business, and we're going to talk Bible, and we're going to get into some really difficult passages, because what I have found in the Bible is that it's essentially the rule book for life. If you want an instruction manual, it's in the Bible. If you want some answers, it's in the Bible. If you really want answers, it's in prayer. But a lot of times we're not taught how to do that, and we're not taught where to look. And I believe that there's been a lot of misinterpretation over the year of Bible passages that have been teed up in a position to promote other people's power. I have nothing to lose. Like when you talk to someone who has lost it all, then they're the riskiest ones because I have nothing to lose. I don't have a degree that's going to get taken away from me. I also don't have years of Bible training in school that have influenced what I've thought. I have thought about these concepts for years. I've written about them. I've sat with them. I've prayed about them. But one thing that I've done over time, even though I didn't exactly know what was going on with my purpose, and I walked away from that when I was about 15 years old, is I've been an observer of what's going on around me. And so while I might have been curious about some certain things, while I might have been confused or interested, or I didn't have the resources around me to answer the questions that I was looking for, because I was a female or because of wherever I was still an acute observer of the life that was happening around me. And those observations are worth a lot. They lend a lot of insight and perspective into what the Bible has been saying, or is saying, and has been saying for years. It's this timeless work that has withstood wars and generation change and political regimes, and it still exists. The second thing is that I believe that when someone is going through a rough time, that's when two things start to really elevate to the purpose. People start looking for, they start elevating to the surface. People start looking for their purpose, and people start looking for answers around who are they. So it's an identity thing and it's a purpose thing. It's really hard to get into purpose, like authentic purpose, without any other intention behind it, but just like sheer purpose without knowing oneself. And so let's go on an adventure with what the Bible says about identity, what God says about identity, what you know about identity, and what you can learn about it and then put into practice. Once you start to really know a foundational level about who you are, then you can start to learn who God is that created you and start to ask questions around that. Like my hope for you is that you ask questions, that in this area we start asking questions. If it doesn't sit well or doesn't seem like it makes sense, keep asking that question. But once you start to ask questions about your creator, then you start to really get answers about why you were created. I have 41 years of evidence around that, and it works every time. It has never let me down. When I start to get concerned about my confidence or uncertain about my confidence, all I have to do is start remembering whose I am, because then I remember who I am. And when I want to dive into like very heady, very relevant Bible study type themes, because I want that in my life, I also want that in your life too. I want to see what can transform. I want to see that you come divorced and disappointed and let down and bitter and turn that around, because the seeds that one plants have fruit. They bear fruit. They're either going to bear fruit of seeds that were planted with bitterness, resentment, anger, disappointment, or they're going to be seeds that grow fruit that are planted with gratitude, appreciation, trust, hope, faith, belief, promise. There's a tremendous awakening that's happening throughout our world and our country right now, I believe. There are a lot of people that are starting to stand up and say, I think actually things could be a little different around education, or nutrition and health, or sleep, or housing, or banking, or parenting, or our mobility and how we get around, how we design a community, how we invest and how we pay for things, how we buy things for businesses to grow or businesses to sell. There's a big shift coming, and it's been happening over several years, and now all of a sudden it's gaining some strong momentum. I anticipate being a voice around what the Bible says, especially around people who have gone through a really tough time and now are showing up here in their 40s, 50s, and 60s saying, I followed the rules. I did what society told me to go do. And now here I am, empty, disappointed, disenfranchised, feeling like there's something more and I don't know what to do with it. And they might even be like me and say things are going really well. There's just something missing inside of what this purpose is. So together, let's go discover it.